It's the Yukon Popcast. I'm Professor Stephen Dyson.
I'm Professor Jeff Dudas.
And Jeff, when I say it's the Yukon Popcast, therein lies some controversy.
Big changes.
Big changes have happened to the channel, and we need to explain ourselves, candidly.
Yes, for our many viewers.
We need to explain what's gone on. This channel was until very recently called Yukon Poly Pop, and the name of the podcast was the Yukon Poly Popcast, and we've changed it ever so slightly to the Yukon Popcast. We are aware that one does not lightly change one's name on YouTube. The algorithm doesn't like it, but we think we do have a good reason to do that, and we want to explain that in this video, explain some of the changes to the channel. We're also cognizant, Jeff, that it's been a year on YouTube.
A full year of this.
Yeah. Did you see your life going this way?
No. I didn't think we'd have two.
Two
I thought
videos.
for the first one that would be it.
Yeah. Well, and it hasn't been. I think we're up to 12 or 13 videos now. We've also gone, therefore, from 0 subscribers to now 138 subscribers, which in the grand YouTube scheme of things is,
Modest.
Yeah, but I'm very sort of pleased and proud and delighted to have every one of our subscribers and every viewer who just catches us kind of randomly. Certainly, if you're not subscribed, please do head down below, as they say.
Smash the like button.
Smash the like button and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.
Yes.
All of those things are important. But for the 138 people who've subscribed since we began this channel, I feel like we should explain what the channel is and what it's about, because you may have joined us at any point along the journey. And so we're going to do several things: explain the changes to the channel, including the changes to the channel name, look back maybe over our first year a little bit, and just explain the basic premise of our channel for people who've joined us quite recently.
Yeah.
Should we get into it?
Let's go.
Okay. So, Yukon Poly Pop to Yukon Popcast. What gives?
So we have a new and exciting institutional affiliation and sponsor who's come on board. This is our home campus's Humanities Institute, the University of Connecticut Humanities Institute.
Yeah, who were just blown away by
the quality, the high quality, the rigor of this broadcast. Could not wait. To get lined up behind us.
Exactly, and so have done a number of wonderful things for us. Have lent us their name and their sponsorship. Have, let's be frank, given us a bit of money to get some more equipment. And so, you may have noticed, if you're a long-time follower, that we used to have kind of one microphone in the middle here, which made audio quite difficult, largely because my voice is about twice as loud as your voice. And now we have 2 microphones being able to get hold of. We're also able to get hold of a nice mixing desk, which did explode the first time we plugged it in, which was not excellent. But the company sent us another one. This one has yet to explode.
Well, it wasn't designed originally for the intensity of our brilliance.
That must be, I think it's something like that.
But the replacement's doing better.
Could have just been a loose wire.
Maybe.
And so that's allowed us. Having 2 microphones is obviously better if you have different volumes of speaking voice. You can get closer to the microphone. Except now I feel like you sound on the finished videos like super bass boosted and kind of testosterone fueled. And I feel like I sound like some little like squeaky rat.
So what you're saying is the new equipment is accurate to life.
Yeah, it's very high fidelity, high quality recording equipment. Absolutely. A new camera we have, which is very good. Some of this equipment I will at some point read the instruction manual as opposed to just leaving it on the auto settings. But that's very good. Humanities Institute, who sponsor us now, have enabled us to do that. They gave us a new channel aesthetic, kind of designed graphics for us, really helping with advertising. We're able to do a lot more things now, including have guests. If you watched our last pod with Professor Susan Burgess that we released just a few days ago, we weren't able to do that before we had this kind of new capacity that UCHI's given us. We're going to have a live show coming up next week.
Very exciting.
Hosted by UCHI in their space. So we're really getting a lot out of this sponsorship, and it's a great organisation, and we're really delighted to be in partnership with them. We did, though, sort of need to, we weren't pressured to, but we did think we needed to slightly modify the name of the channel. Polypop was a conjunction of politics and popular culture, or political science and popular culture, which is our home department. And we're still, in close partnership with them. We thought Popcast might, what was the thinking behind the change?
Popcast is maybe a little, I suppose it decenters the discipline of political science a little bit. It maintains obviously our abiding interest in popular culture, and it does maintain our abiding interest in politics, but politics writ large, politics as all of the things that communities do, including all the ways that they make meaning with one another and talk with one another in order to help live. And that's a very broad interest of political science, but it is an interest that spans disciplines, it seems to me, in a way that is maybe unique.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to draw more explicitly or maybe legitimately or in a way that accorded with the title of the channel on the humanities writ large rather than purely politics.
Yes.
I think we felt maybe we're very proud of our videos so far, and we're going to talk about some of our maybe what we think are some of the better videos that you could find on this channel. I think we're very proud of those, but we did feel at times that we had to talk about politics in places where politics explicitly was not central to the text.
Exactly.
But
so the form, I think that's exactly right. There were certainly a few conversations where we would struggle to try to shoehorn in a kind of formal understanding of politics and a focus on governing institutions or elite actors when they don't always appear with any regularity in some of these texts.
Right, but we would say, that politics is extremely broad. Yeah. And the title was not completely misleading. Politics, I think, as you defined it, the way that people negotiate, how they kind of live together and make sense of their lives, is obviously central to all of the humanities and central to all of popular culture. And not to get too inside baseball here, but if you read any kind of scholarly studies of popular culture, they almost always are talking about the politics of the text, even if they're written by like a literature scholar or a musicologist or someone from those backgrounds. Yeah. So Yukon Podcast, I like the name. I think it's a good new name. There's always a danger when you change the name that people find it harder to find you, which I think is one motivation for making this video. Although there is a paradox, right? Because if you make a video for people who can't find your channel, how does that actually help? But I don't know. It's the internet and the algorithm. Who knows how it works?
It's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a mystery. Okay, good. So those are the changes to the channel. I thought what we would do as well, Jeff, is maybe for people who have joined us since the beginning, which really is everyone, if you have sort of a profound philosophical statement. People who joined us from when we had 0 viewers and 0 subscribers to now when the channel as a whole has like 8,500 views so far across all the videos. 138 subscribers. I think we thought it would be useful to talk about a fairly consistent methodology that we apply in the videos, certainly when it's just me and you.
Yes.
Right? I think when we have a guest, obviously we're led by their intellectual framework and interests. If we're discussing a book that a guest's written, we're obviously going to stay within the framework of that book. But when it's just me and you, we have a fairly consistent way that we approach a text, whether it's a movie or a TV show, or in the past we've done music.
Yes.
So, do you want to take us through it?
Sure. It's this 3-part method that we have structured most of our videos around, and it is really an attempt to put some structure around our discussions, to put some structure around, in particular, our interpretations of whichever popular culture texts that we are engaged in that session. And the first is what we've called on the surface or surface politics. And we struggled for a long time to put to words, I think, what it is that we meant. And a couple of weeks ago, you, Stephen, actually came up with a succinct understanding and definition of what it is that we mean by on the surface.
Yeah, this is, as good academics, this is the way that we work, which is you do something for a long time, and then someone says, explain yourself, and you're like, I absolutely can't.
Right.
But let me bash out something that kind of sounds reasonable and try and retcon the entirety of the catalogue into these categories. So on the surface, which when we were Polypop, we would call politics on the surface. Yeah. This candidly was the thing that I felt where we were most often shoehorning political references into things. So we'd talk about a text that, Taylor Swift, and we'd only have really 2 or 3 things to say about things that she'd said about politics explicitly. And we were just desperate to get to the second and third categories.
Exactly.
Whereas now I think thinking of on the surface within the realm of the popcast, not just the polypopcast, is going to be easier for us. And I think that's why it's been easier for us to define this category. So the first cut that we will take at a popular culture text, the first kind of weighing on the surface, we mean at the most basic level, like what happens in the text.
The plot.
Right? Exactly, the plot. the things that happen, the basic structure of, if it's a narrative in film or television, or the kind of textual meaning of the lyrics, maybe in a piece of music, or I keep wanting to say the word obvious, and maybe it's not obvious.
Well, the other thing that happens in this level of analysis, it seems to me, is that what we really end up searching for are a lot of those formal elements of the political. So things like, are there references to formal governing institutions or to elite governmental actors?
Yeah.
People and things or structures that appear to be central to the movement of the story.
Yeah.
And frequently that's true, but frequently it's not true.
Yeah.
And I think where we would struggle was distinguishing that level of analysis from the other two.
Yeah, whereas I think it's just a lot clearer now, right? It's like you want to understand a song, you get the lyric sheet, and you see what it says, and you try and kind of puzzle that through.
Yeah.
And analysis can't stop there, can't stop at the textual level, but it does need to begin there. I also think in this level, or in this first cut, this on the surface level, Jeff, we have things like references and allusions, not only to real things in the outside world, which could be politics or could, as we've said, be things beyond politics, although you aver there is nothing beyond politics. But also what's often called like intertextual references, like references to other cultural or popular cultural things, products, texts, and when we did a video about the Arctic Monkeys, and when Alex Turner says in the first line of Tranquility Base album,
I just wanted to be one of the Strokes. Now look at the mess you made me make.
I just wanted to be one of the Strokes.
Yeah.
That is a classic intertextual reference, right? That has meaning beyond that line because it cues up the Strokes, a contemporary rock band who are similar in some ways and different in other ways. And then the textual meaning of I just want it has an air of regret, an air of a journey through a life. But you have to actually know who the Strokes were and are, and what their relationship was to a younger Alex Turner of the Arctic Monkeys.
Or, for example, when Taylor Swift sings in The Man, when she contrasts her social and kind of celebrity life with Leo DiCaprio, right? And the differences in which those two are treated as popular culture icons. This is that kind of intertextual relationship as well.
Yeah, I think so. So that's the first cut that we will make on a text. There's 3. The second cut that we'll make on a text, we commonly call mythologies, which I use loosely to allude to Roland Barthes, the French, what would you say, philosopher, cultural critic?
Yes.
Yeah, so as I understand, which is obviously imperfectly and cack-handedly, but as I understand his famous work on mythologies and his famous book Mythologies, his argument was that understanding like a cultural artifact, like he has a famous essay on wrestling, or a photograph, or an actress, or a film, he would say you can't just stay on the surface of that thing and like look at the photograph or watch what's happening in the wrestling, but you have to understand the social structures of meaning that are behind this thing and that are sort of encoded into the artifact and that give it meaning. And so these tend to be kind of pre-existing shared social structures of understanding that allow you to understand like what a rock star is and what Alex Turner is saying. Alex Turner is not only saying I wanted to be one of the Strokes, he's also alluding to cultural archetypes, I guess would be another word for mythologies, of rock stardom and what it entails and how you can use these shared structures of meaning to decode some of the textual references that are made.
Yes, exactly. And I would encourage us to not get too caught up, encourage audience not to get too caught up in the language of myth or mythologies, which can mean a lot of different things depending upon context.
This means that I completely misdefined it and Jeff is being polite.
No, not at all. But mythologies, I think, is really a reference to these kinds of deep cultural themes, ideas, values. And it's exactly as you say. The things that we encounter in the world, the things, the images, they have, the meanings that they have are things that people bring to them, right? And that we make sense of. And so in this level of analysis, we are really interested in all of the ways that people make sense of popular cultural texts, right? All of the things, as you say, all of the reference, the historical, the political reference, sometimes the explicitly political reference, the different kinds of ways of interpretation or making sense of a thing that a people, a culture develops over its life.
Yeah, and a people or a culture is interesting because that suggests that it could vary by the culture, right?
Indeed.
Like I'm British and my understanding of something, I think we talked about this with Batman, like my understanding of Batman might be different from your understanding of Batman as an American. Or we talked about mythologies a lot in Star Wars and like the hero's journey or the Han Solo as a kind of classic cowboy archetype, which you definitely needed to know the cowboy mythology or the cowboy archetype to properly interpret the character of Han Solo. So ideology might be another sense, another word you could use for mythologies. Now, mythologies, Jeff, is often, and I wonder if you agree with this or if this is a point of divergence. We're always looking for minor points of divergence so that I can legitimately put in the title things like heated debate or professors have beef in this sort of vain attempt to, vain maybe in both senses of the word, to game the YouTube algorithm, which is like this mysterious god to me that capricious and entirely unpredictable. Mythologies to me often implies a sort of conservatism, right? These are existing social structures that are necessary to a text, right? Which means they're sort of reinforcing status quo elements of a society or reinscribing a society with things like a cowboy archetype, which might actually be ripe for transformation, but transformational things we tend not to discuss in this second level of mythology. It tends to be more of a status quo category. Am I overselling that, or does that sound right to you? I mean, ideology is often distinguished from critique, which will come to our third category, precisely by that distinction, right? That critique is revolutionary, but ideology is status quo.
I think we have a disagreement here.
We have beef.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
Professors have beef.
I don't believe that there is anything inherent about long-standing, shared ways of making sense of the world that is inherently conservative in terms of regressive or reactionary or stabilizing of contemporary structures of power. Indeed, texts, it seemed to me, cultures, it seems to me, speak in multiple voices. As as one of my friends would call it, the $10 word here is that they are multivalent. They have multiple modes of expression and multiple sets of meaning that get communicated. And I think of our most recent video on James Bond, for example, that even in what our great guest, Professor Susan Burgess, refers to as the traditional era of the Bond movies, even then you get these hints of playfulness, you get these hints of multivalence in the presentation of the text and in the presentation of the characters, right? And so while I might agree with you that the preponderance of the weight of mythology or ideology points to stabilization of contemporary structures of power, it's never complete, as the famous Italian philosopher and theorist Antonio Gramsci said. Hegemony is never complete, right? It is always open to contestation. It is always open to the possibility of being reworked. And so much of what makes our popular culture texts so interesting is that they are in fact encoded with frequently conflicting meanings.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'll buy that. I guess I would, and maybe it's just for the purpose of having three distinct levels. I would tend to think if we were challenging existing social structures of meaning, I would suggest we'd started to move into what's our traditional third category, which is the category of critique.
Yeah. Here's where I think we're still trying to figure out distinctions, the clear distinctions between the three levels of analysis.
Yeah. So we often say this is like our deepest dive into the meaning of a popular cultural text, and we'll call it the section on critique. We often say this is, again, the $10 word, like normative-based questioning. Yeah. You know, looking at the world that's presented in the text and saying, is it kind of right and proper that things should exist in this way? Or taking the text as a critique of, like, our world, which is asking the question, is it right and proper? So I'm a big fan of science fiction, and I tend to argue that is the unique... It's not the unique property of science fiction, but it's the leading property of science fiction, is that it's a critique fundamentally of our world, and often a normative-based critique. Yeah. And I tend to think most of the work in science fiction is being done at this level of critique. And the mythologies or the social structures of meaning tend to be in a work of science fiction to create that link and make that link clear between our world and the created science fiction world. But really the author or the creator wants, or the analyst, wants to get to the level of critique, wants to get to the questioning of, not only the questioning of, is this real, or what is reality, but should this be real? Should this be how things operate?
I think that's the key line there, is that in this level of analysis, I do think there's a normative element in which the texts are asking, how should we live, right? Or what are the consequences of living like this in a way that is more obvious, a little easier to detect than some of the deeper mythological or ideological meanings of the second level of analysis.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so I think we covered the what happens in at the level of critique, a defamiliarizing from the present order of things in or prompted by the text, the elements of a different way of living. Yeah. That are present in the text, or the provision of motivation to seek a different way of living, which again, it's very obvious in a lot of science fiction. But even you detected it in some of Taylor Swift's lyrics. You know, a different way of being more kind of comfortable with yourself, that you could piece together from different things that she'd said. Right. Sometimes in the level of critique, we ourselves offer the critique in that we'll take a text that might actually be fairly conservative, and a lot of it's going on at the level of mythologies, but we'll offer an against the grain reading, a counter reading of the text that might lend it some critical properties. I think if you were to watch our Top Gun video, we did a fair amount of
there was a lot
against the grain reading of some of the patriotism or images of masculinity that were present in there.
Yeah, especially in contrast between the earlier and the later film.
Yeah. So I think that's our three-part framework. Hopefully that's useful to viewers who might find this video. Have joined us along the way. If you were to go back and look at our back catalogue, hopefully you'd see elements of that framework playing out in the various texts. I think we probably just have a minute here left, Jeff, but with a year on YouTube, I mean, what are the highlights? Or let me put it another way: have there been any moments of that would qualify as a highlight?
Oh, I think so. We've had a lot of fun, I think, and I think we've had a lot of interesting and even stimulating discussions. I would push it back onto you. What are our favorite moments?
What are our favorite moments? So the great triumph. So this is the thing with starting on YouTube, which is you get kind of obsessed with the numbers, just because it's a number and it's there, and you're like, well, I want a bigger number, even though before you would make a YouTube video, you're like, that's stupid, and you know all the problems with the numbers and what does it mean if someone clicks on a video and watches it for 3 seconds? Yeah, well, it's a view. I got a view. Yep. That's terrific. So one big highlight was just the raw numbers that watched the Taylor Swift video, which is by some distance.
Watching them roll in.
That was amazing. It was just by some distance our biggest video. And I think the reason it got so many clicks is, if you remember, Jeff, that's the day I wore the avocado-coloured shirt.
It's definitely why.
And I think in the thumbnail, the way it popped with my blue eyes was clickbait to almost an illegal level.
Everyone knew that you were a daydream in that moment.
But dressed like a nightmare, which will to recycle that joke from the actual Taylor Swift video. So go back and watch that. Because I also think it was a very good discussion of Taylor Swift. I think our Arctic Monkeys video, I'm pretty proud of, the analytical framework we constructed around the 2 Arctic Monkeys albums that we put together. I suppose we should say, Jeff, that we are, contrary to all appearances, sort of working professors, and we kind of use these podcasts as sort of verbal first drafts of research
Yeah.
projects. And so we are working on, you know, a kind of written analyses of many of the texts that we've made videos about.
Yeah.
And the written stuff follows maybe several years after the video, but talking it out and researching it is super useful.
It is.
I think that's true for me. You know, I'm trying to write about Arctic monkeys.
Yeah.
What else were highlights? What do you think?
Well, for me, I will say, surprisingly, I thought that the Top Guns analysis was really one of our more interesting.
Because you did not want to make that video.
Do it.
You hated the first movie. You thought it was going to be awful.
Yeah.
You flat out refused. You welched on our deal to grow mustaches for the videos. So, you know, and all you had to do was shave off, you know, the kind of bottom part, and that would have been easy for you. I'd start from scratch. But nonetheless, you enjoyed the video.
I thought it really hit some high points in both in the way that we've been imagining this three-part series of three-part analysis. But also, I feel like the contrast between the two movies was really useful.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very intriguing in a way. The 40 years in between the two, or 35 years in between the two texts, I thought were really revealing about a lot of larger changes in American culture, in some ways in kind of broader Anglo-American culture as well. So I really think that one went well. The other one that I thought that I was surprised at, which I also didn't want to do, was our first reaction to the 3 episodes of The Last of Us, which was also your idea, and I was not all that interested at first. But I thought that we also hit some really interesting things, and part of it is that we were doing that video when everything was very current. There had only been 3 episodes, but I feel like we hit on some things that really defined what was going to happen the rest of the year. Neither of us knew anything about this story, and I think we offered some against the grain readings as well that were distinctive, particularly in the ways that the show was received critically at the time.
Yeah, yes.
And obviously the Taylor Swift was a favorite, which is what I did want to do that, but I convinced you into thinking it was your idea.
Yeah.
So.
No, Taylor Swift was our one semi-viral video was definitely your idea, and you know we did joke we should call every video like react to Taylor Swift, regardless of what the contents of the of the video are. I know that's a good set of highlights. So it's been a good first year. Yep. Jeff, one thing we always do is we make these kind of show plans and always miss off something important. The thing we missed off this time was talking about the audio-only version of the podcast, which is another thing we're now able to do thanks to our excellent sponsors. So there is an audio-only version of the Yukon podcast. If for some mysterious reason you don't like looking at our gurning, stupid faces for an hour every time we put a video out, you could listen to our irritating voices instead and look at our lovely logo instead of our horrible faces.
And you can do other stuff with your life, like wash the dishes or clean the basement or whatever.
Right, or repeatedly hit like and subscribe on our YouTube videos, you know, for the full hour while listening on a separate device, ideally using a VPN so it fools the algo into thinking that you're 2 separate people and we get extra views. I haven't thought deeply about how to get more views. But there is an audio version of the Yukon podcast. It's available on all major podcast providers like the Apple one and Spotify and so on and so forth. And so if that's more your speed, please do like, subscribe, leave a good rating.